Morning. Welcome to Bluebird Semaphore, another edition of World History for Ordinary People. I didn't start off with Placido's Canon because, as you see, I have some art on the piano, and it's not going to scratch or do any harm because they're very light paper pieces. But if you zoom in on this, you'll see there's three paintings. And they're by this fella here. It's Paul Tokorian. And eventually, I hope to put up a lot of his stuff, which I came across at a flea market. A lady who cleans out houses had cleaned something out in Jersey City. I think it was a second story or an attic apartment. And she found all these paintings. And I was able to get them. But she told me briefly that this guy was basically doing his thing in the 60s. And she tells me, I don't know how true it is, but he went to Florida and he killed in an auto accident or something like that. So by about 1969, he had left the scene. And I acquired it. And it looks like he was just about ready to do a show in Manhattan, and I guess that maybe that never happened. But he was trying to be a new way of painting, new way of looking at art, whatever. But like I said, I'll get into this. And because this is really going to be about history today. I just want to put that out there, though, for you to take a look. And before I leave art, though, I want to say I think I was doing a painting thing, but I never put it up on Bluebird. And I said something during that. This was one of those watch me paint deals. And I think I said that you need certain energies to do different tasks. In painting, you need a certain energy. And that day I had the energy, and I got up and I painted. And you have to have that. If you don't have that energy, you're wasting your time. And the same thing is true with playing the piano. You need a certain kind of energy to sit down and do that. However, with the piano, you can't wait for that energy to come because you got to be disciplined. You got to get there, play. Maybe eventually the right energy comes, but you can't wait to get the energy. With the painting, I waited. I'll wait 2 weeks. If I have to. When I really have the energy, I really got it, boom, then I go. Writing, the same thing, although you have these people who say, you're going to write so many words a day if you're a writer, blah, blah, blah. I don't particularly agree with that. I have a great example in mind who I'm not even going to say the name, but very prolific writer. Very prolific, and 90% of what he writes is just trivial. It's like newspaper articles. It's just terrible. So, and this person was pushed by the magazines and newspapers to write serial stuff, and you tell it. He was one that had to write so many words a day. Now, it works for some folks, and I will say it worked for Ernest Hemingway. He was very disciplined. He had to write every day. He wrote standing up at a writing table, and he was very effective. And I've never read anything by him that wasn't top of the line, So it works for some. It doesn't work for others. For me, when I wrote, I needed to have a clear slate. I needed to have time in front of me, and then I would sit down and write. And I never felt I had to. If I ever feel like I have to, I get out of whatever it is as fast as I can. So anyway, I just wanted to talk a little bit about that. But today we're talking about history. And I know that I've talked about this fella before, Thorstein Veblen, and his monumental book, The Theory of the Leisure Class. And in my readings and such, I came across a term in his book called a predatory culture. Now, that's a term that we can ascribe to almost all the people on the planet when they were still living in their Paleolithic and Neolithic cultures and early historical cultures. Okay, and Thorsten, of course, has something to say about that, and that's why I have the book here. So, what does Thorsten have to say about that? The traits of predatory man are by no means obsolete in the common run of modern populations. He's making the claim that these traits are still in us, but they're suppressed. They are present and can be called out in bold relief at any time by any appeal to the sentiments in which they express themselves, unless this appeal should clash with the specific activities that make up our habitual occupations and comprise the general range of our everyday interest. The common run of the population of any industrial community is emancipated from these economically considered untoward propensities only in the sense that though partial and temporary disuse, they have lapsed into the background of subconscious motives. Once again, we're talking about the predatory behaviors. With varying degrees of potentiality in different individuals, they remain available for the aggressive shaping of men's actions and sentiments whenever a stimulus of more than everyday intensity comes in to call them forth. And they assert themselves forcibly in any case where no occupation alien to the predatory culture has usurped the individual's everyday range of interest and sentiment. So basically he's saying there that these things can come back if there is something that's motivating the cultures to move towards predatory. They can come back. Maybe not in full blown, but they come back. And he gives, I think it's a very charming example of this, in that he talks about the leisure class 19th century man who walks around with his walking stick, basically a cane with a knobbed end, almost like a club. But he says this is a perfect example of that those tendencies still within the individual. However, he then further defines it and specifies where you're going to see that. You're going to see that in the leisure class, the top people walking around Fifth Avenue in Manhattan in 1890 with their walking stick, i.e. club, and it serves a couple of purposes. One, and I think this is very clever of Thorsten, because he says that by having this walking stick in his hand, he's advertising to the other people walking by that, well, look at me. I'm so well off. I'm so magnificent. I can have my hand in use for no reason at all. For no reason at all, I can occupy my hand. Look at that. My hand is totally free from work of any kind because I'm so wonderful. I can hold this walking stick that I don't need. I know. So this is what he says. And then he points out, and look around, the women don't have walking sticks for the most part. And the only other part of the culture that had walking sticks were the ruffians in the streets. The people in between basically didn't. Okay, so the ruffians in the street still were being barbaric, and the upper leisure class types walking around with their walking stick were trying to express a sentiment. That look at me, I still have these traits, but they're under control, and I can put something in my stick which can be seen as a weapon, but I don't need it, and I'm so free of work and any of that triviality that I can occupy my hand with something that's useless. So that's Thorsten's word on predatory cultures. And so I only remind, and I have said this before, that to think that this is out of our systems is ridiculous. It's there, yes. We have over many centuries kind of pushed that predatory predilection into the background. It's not there on an everyday basis, but it can be there. And we do see it in certain occupations that still go on in this world. So that I wanted to talk about, and that's part of history. I think that when we talk about human behavior, we're talking history. I don't slice history up as just the, things about war and trade and commerce. It's everything that fits into the construct sphere. Okay, Thurston's Veblen's leisure class theory and everything he wrote fits into that. There's the globe back there. Into that construct sphere that all the people are intersecting with, so we talked about that. But actually, I said the last time we were together for world history for ordinary people that I was going to dig into Poland and the Reformation. Well, I haven't really dug yet. A little bit, a tiny bit. I got a few things on Poland. I'll just throw them out now. Nothing, I really didn't dig. I didn't even go to the library yet. But I thought it interesting to find that Poland was quite a seriously large, maybe the largest country in Europe at the time. Before, I'm going to just throw out a number, before 1800. She was big and encompassed both Poland and the Duchy of Lithuania, I believe, and it went from the Baltic Sea up there down to where we start talking about the Balkans, and we start talking about Hungary and all that stuff. So it was a very large country. Russia, for all that time, hadn't even got out of the creeping forest stage yet. And west of Poland, they weren't united and or big yet. They were all fractional and marginal, sliced up little duchies and states and what have you. But Poland was big. However, the other big force on the planet at the time was the Ottoman Turks, who for at least 300 years was riding on top of Europe, good chunk of Europe. And of course, those countries that were under their yoke didn't like it that much. And this is where the Poland part comes in, is that at one point, at about 1760, the good Sultan was banging on the gates and the wall of Vienna. And quite frankly, if they had done the right things, they would have overrun Vienna, and that would have been changed history quite radically, I'm pretty sure. But along came John Sobieski, King John Sobieski of Poland. A little bit I've read about him was that he was a pretty great king and great military type also. So the people in Vienna during the siege, they managed to get like 10,000 of their troops out and up somewhere, and they waited for the rescuers to come. And John Sobieski, King John Sobieski, and other folks, I forget if it was Poland and somebody else, came to their rescue, and they did rescue. They beat back the Turks, and that was considered quite an accomplishment. King John came into Vienna as a savior. They hailed him as a returning Caesar. Okay, but that was short-lived because, and this is why I'm starting to flip on Poland a little, in that he comes back to a country that is now all fractionalized by the minuscule dukes and dukedoms and duchies and all these people carving up to get their share of the pie, and all of them saying that King John has too much. So they marginalized King John, and after that, in no time at all, it was over for Poland, because they didn't stay strong and united and keep off the forces from Russia and keep off Prussia, and Prussia was getting bigger and stronger and so on. So you know, and that was in the 1760, 1770 time frame. Now, if you just jump ahead 100 years, we got Joe Conrad saying, I very, very, disheartened by looking at all the invasions that my country has gone through from Russia and Prussia in a small matter of 100 years. Whereas if King John had stayed strong and was the wherewithal of the whole nation, probably they could have kept all that at bay, and Poland didn't have to go through that business that they went through. Although I don't know how that type of state would have managed against Nazi Germany. But that's what I wanted to say about Poland. But as far as the referendum, I mean, that's a serious challenge, because the little bit that I looked into it, it's like they believe these people walked on water. Now, today, 400 years later, they think that those people doing the Reformation walked on water. Whereas I said earlier that both sides were equally bad, and as the old saying goes, if you build your house on quicksand, watch out, And I think for a long, long, long time, we've been on the watch out side of things, and very much a minority view, of course, but it's just crazy. I mean, I picked up one brief book on people who are supposed to have been imbued with courage, and they put one of these personalities from the Reformation as a man of great courage. I mean, all this fella did was say, terrible things about other people, and then he would hide, and then he'd get somebody to protect him, and then he'd go hide again. He'd say more terrible things. The brief reading that I read, not a single piece of courage, none, and yet here you get this adulation. Let me tell you, I'm going to do some reading on this thing, and I don't think it's going to be good what comes out. But and with Poland too, I'm very. But I want to read in there. There was a early, maybe 1200s or 1400s. There was something called the Great Northern War, which aligned the belligerents in this war. It was a war with Poland and maybe like Sweden. The Great Northern War, or the Great War of the North. But I thought it was quite humorous that there were 22 sub-states that were the belligerents in this. And it was double that many, these nobles and knights and dukes all riding around on their armored horses. More than that. And I just got the image of, Mel Brooks' History of the World, Part 2, and or Monty Python, whatever his name is. And just how crazy, 22 belligerent states. How did they keep abreast of who they were killing? And so it was 20 years the war took. They killed 200,000 people. So do the math, they were killing 10,000 people a year. And I don't even think they knew what they were fighting for. Other than, that was the sport of the upper echelon at the time, Wage a war. You become a prince or a king at 12. The next thing you know, at 13, you're leading an army and you're killing people. We have a wonderful history, folks, and I hope to bring out some more of this great, great story of world history. Granted, there will be many, many wonderful, good things too, but, maybe the best thing to do is never open a book. And with that being said, I'll sign off for today. Maybe I'll get a chance to go down to the library and actually read something on these things. Okay, come on, little boy. Don't want to do it, so we'll do this manual.